it'll probably take me a little bit longer to explain it. Before I do that, though, do any of you guys have any questions on what you've been going over, anything about the course at all? I hate to jump right in without asking if there's any questions or concerns.
No.
I did get the video, Kelly. Thank you.
Oh, good. Did you just figure it out on your own? It just worked?
Well, it worked when you resent it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that didn't work. I couldn't open it the other way. It just said you're not allowed to open. But
okay.
But then when you resent it, it worked fine. Thank you.
Okay. See, what we do when you become a certified trainer, you have access to a file called PCA Trainer Share, and that's where we keep all of our videos, all the workshops, all the different, everything you would need. But you don't get access to that folder until you're a certified trainer.
Gotcha.
So I found out when I take documents from that and try to share them with you guys, it doesn't always work because you don't have access.
Gotcha.
So that's why I have a separate, what I do is I take those files and I pull them over into my Dropbox account so that I can share them with you and there's no permission rights needed, all that stuff. So that's where we're at. Everybody else okay with the videos and the PowerPoints and all that stuff?
Good.
All right, awesome. Okay, well, I'm going to jump right in. What I'm going to start with today is just the last 5 steps in the SMAC recipe that I didn't get a chance to continue. I started last week with the first 5, and I just want to make sure I go over these so that they're mentioned. As I said, most of them are pretty commonsensical, but when you get evaluated in doing a workshop, we're actually looking for these 11 things. So I just want to make sure that I don't miss them. Number 7 on this SMAC recipe, I'll read through it, is making the book a lasting resource. And this is where the partner managers, the ones that set up the accounts and set up the workshops, they actually sell this book to the partners. And it's a pretty big investment on the part of the partners. This book makes the workshop so much better because you're not just sharing information with them and then sending them on their way. You're sharing highlights of information from this book, and then you're giving them a resource to take with them. So by not sharing the book with them, it's almost like, okay, here's your party gift, here's a book. So during the workshop, I like to have the audience in the book, looking at the resources, seeing how user-friendly it is. And I have had many, many coaches that have come back to me later and said, this is my Bible. Like, this is in my backpack all the time because, at one point in your season, you might really need to focus on mastery. And the other point in the season, halfway through the season, when you realize your players are really dejected and not motivated, it's like, oh, let me look back in here about that filling emotional tank ideas and the toolkit. So I really can't suggest enough that you know the book inside and out. And as you can see mine, I always have like sticky notes sticking out of the top of all the pages so that during a workshop I can just flip open and say, oh yeah, on page 32, you might want to just take a look. This workshop also used to be a workbook workshop, and I think I might even have an old one here if I can show you. It was a fill in the blanks. Here it is. Here's one of them. It was a fill in the blank type workbook, and it literally had spaces where you'd go through the PowerPoint, and it's almost just like the PowerPoint slides, and they would just fill in the blanks, which worked for many years. However, when it was over, that wasn't a resource that people used. This is a nice, easy to read book, and again, good resource. But it is an investment the partner has made. So some of the partners have said, I really didn't feel like the trainers valued this book enough, and then I spent all this money on getting these books for my coaches. That's something that I wish they would have done. So that's number 7, make the book a lasting resource. Number 8 is hone your Go ahead, George.
Do they have that book on audio?
I don't believe so.
I kind of yesterday when I went on my walk, I went ahead and read both chapters out and recorded it and just kind of played it when I was doing my walk yesterday. I'm kind of rehabbing, so I was like, well, shoot, I might as well just listen to it. I'm not the best reader in the world, but it actually was pretty good. So I didn't know if you had one audio or what.
No, I don't believe it is on audio.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point to make. That would be great. So number 8 is hone your stories. Now, this one, again, it's controversial among some people because in the description it says practice your stories so that you can use them to hit the key PCA points in less than 60 seconds. There's very few people that can deliver a very quality story in 60 seconds or less. So I want you to take that with a grain of salt. A 10-minute story, way too much. I usually say keep stories to 2 to 3 minutes. But, I mean, you guys have heard me. I'm a talker. I'm a storyteller. I think a lot of these workshops come to life by the stories that you share about players that you've had. And I think if you have a story that's really impactful, of a player who has completely changed or has had a tough situation and then seen the value of filling emotional tanks, and you want to take a few extra minutes to tell a story for that one situation, I say go for it. But if we don't say keep your stories honed to 60 seconds, I've also heard trainers go on for 10 minutes and the story goes on and on and on and on. So honing your stories, I think, is more important than keeping them to a certain time limit. Use your stories carefully. I can't tell you how many workshops I've gone out of and I take the drive home and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot to mention that. Oh, I can't believe I forgot that. All of us as coaches probably have 30 different stories in our head of players, and you want to just practice your stories. Practice them in front of your family. Tell a friend, because sometimes a story that's or a player that has such an impact on you, it just doesn't illustrate the principle as well as it could. So I always say have at least 2 stories for each principle, because sometimes a question from the audience might trigger you to explain about, oh, this is a player I've had, or I have a friend who coached this team, or this is someone I played against when I was playing myself. So stories are really important. We actually had a book club a year ago, and we read Jonah Sachs' book, The Story Wars book, and it's a great book because it really talks about the power of stories these days and the way even marketing has changed from a very data-driven marketing world to storytelling. People like to hear that. And when I do my evaluations at the end of the workshop and I ask, what was your favorite part of the workshop? A lot of people will say Kelly's personal stories or stories that she's told of other coaches. That's what people remember. So I think storytelling is a very important skill, but it can also be abused and get us away from this. So there's a fine line there, and again, it just takes practice. Number 9, we've addressed this, addressing the role of winning. You all know how I feel about winning and competition. We just want to make sure right off the bat that the people in this workshop understand that we are not de-competition. We are not taking away competition. We actually want to make competition better. So addressing that right in the beginning of the workshop can sometimes put the audience's mind at ease. Like, yeah, we are about winning. We are about being competitive. We have a competitive national advisory board. These companies, these national organizations like AAU and NSCAA soccer, these are not organizations that want to partner with an organization that is soft or about everybody gets a trophy. These are organizations that want to partner with Positive Coaching Alliance because they want our principles and the development zone culture to be the standard, the gold standard for sports in this country. And so that's addressing the role of winning, I think, is crucial. Number 10 and 11 are pretty simple. Ending early with a honed finish. The way that you end the workshop is almost as important as the way you begin it. So to wrap up a workshop, a lot of times, trainers will look at the clock and they'll say, oh gosh, I only have 5 minutes left and there's 10 slides left. My advice when that happens is that the people in the audience have no idea what those 10 slides are. So don't be afraid. Don't feel like you have to click through every single slide because they don't know. It's better to just have a nice, simple ending to your workshop. Ask a few questions. Even if you know I'm running out of time, you can do the honoring the game principle in 2 slides, or you can do it in 6. But I think rushing through the end really just makes it too hyper, and the audience doesn't know what they're missing. So ending with a honed finish, deliver your finish in about 60 seconds or less, end early. There's nothing worse than a workshop that goes longer than you said it would. And that's why the very first question I always ask the partner when I arrive at a workshop is, what time did you tell the coaches they were going to be finished? So sometimes they say, oh, I told them they'd be here for 3 hours. Well, then you're like Santa Claus because you're telling these people, guess what, I'll be done in 2. And they're all excited. But just always make sure that that's clear. I've had other times when I have planned on being there for 2 hours and the partner said, oh, no, I thought it was only an hour. So you just have to be careful, be aware of the time. There's been a lot of workshops where I've sat there getting there 30 minutes ahead of time and gone through my PowerPoint and gone hide slide, hide slide, hide slide, hide slide so that I know which slides I'm going to be doing and taking out important ones that are not so important at the time. Number 11 is, sending evaluations. This is something I'll go through at the end when we do the last principle, but at the end of every workshop, there is an evaluation on the last page of the book, and we ask everyone to tear that out and fill out that evaluation just to see what they liked about the workshop, what they didn't like, everything from length to content, and then they actually evaluate you as a presenter. And on the back is a way they can become a PCA member. It's also a great place they could put down a recommendation if they have another organization they want to partner with. And as trainers, we mail these evaluations in to the Mountain View office in California, and they get shared and calculated, and the partners get put in our database matching with the text to sign in. And that's the way we keep track of everything. So any questions on that? I know I went through that quickly. Everybody good on that stuff? Okay, I can answer questions too on the logistical stuff as we go on. But I would like to jump right into the Elm Tree of Mastery, if that's okay with everybody. My small audience of 4. I love small audiences. I love it when I walk into a workshop and expect 30 coaches sometimes, and like 4 people show up. I'm like, I used to get so disappointed when that happened. The first time I did a workshop for 2 people, I thought there was going to be 50. And I was thinking, oh, this is terrible. And it was one of the best workshops we ever did because we could literally take a look at those teams and really dig down. It was fun. So it's even better when you think there's going to be 20 and 120 show up because it works both ways. All right, so this is where I ended. Actually, I should say this is where I ended last week. So to flow from the introduction of the workshop where we're talking about the model of double goal coaching, if you remember, the last thing that I had the coaches do was talk about what life lessons, what are the life lessons, call them out, share them. What are 10 life lessons that sports has taught you? And a lot of times they'll say determination, teamwork, cooperation, hard work, bouncing back from defeat. These are all the life lessons. And I think for most of you, I think you heard this last week, I always follow that by saying, and it's so true, I've never ever had anyone say that one of the lessons that sports has taught them in their adult life is how to stop a soccer ball on a dime or how to shoot a perfect foul shot, because those are not the lessons that stay with them. Those aren't the things that you will remember all the way through. And interestingly, Harvard Business School did a study back in about 2008, and they interviewed these CEOs of these Fortune 500 companies, and they asked how many of them were the top 10% of their class academically in college. And what they found was that only about 70% of them were the top 10% of their class. When they asked how many of them were varsity athletes, it was into the 90 percentile, how many of them were varsity athletes. So I always tell that at my athlete workshops, and they go, great, phew, I don't have to do any schoolwork. I just have to be a good athlete. Not quite what we're talking about. But those lessons, there's really no better place than the athletic field to learn some of these lessons. And I was just telling my girls the other night as they were swimming in a swim meet, it was freezing cold, it was 60 degrees, it was pouring rain. And on the drive home, I told them, I said, guys, someday you're going to be in a really tough situation, and you're going to have to draw upon the strength that you learned tonight in being able to push through something really hard and really just make it. You know it. You're going to draw from this swim meet. You're going to remember it. And my 7-year-old daughter goes, is that like when we have babies, Mom? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. So the life lessons you learn in sports can translate to many areas of your life. All right. Now, here's a term that PCA has patented. It's called the development zone. And this is probably something that a lot of you haven't heard of, but this is the culture that we're trying to create in developing our mission of better athletes, better people. The reason we call it a development zone is because when you're out there coaching youth, they should be in a developmental stage, in a developmental zone. I think of it like this. If I were to hand all of you right now a brand new cell phone, and I said, this is hot off the presses. This is an iPhone 7, and it is brand new, but it's a prototype that's in development right now. So I'm going to give it to you for free. And in 6 weeks, I want to come back, and I'm going to hear what you thought of this new iPhone 7 that just came out. Now, if I was handing you this product for free, and I said it's in development, would you expect it to do some really cool things? Yeah. Would you expect that it's better than the iPhone 6, the one previous? Yeah. Would you expect it to crash and burn sometimes and not be perfect? Yeah, because it's in development. As coaches, sometimes we have to remember that these children that we're coaching are in development. Now, the opposite of a development zone is the entertainment industry of sports. Okay, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to give me one of the major differences. What are something that you could say would be a major difference between the entertainment sports industry and the youth sports culture? Now, if you were in a big group, I would have you just turn to a partner right now and just tell them, what is one of the main differences? So I'm just going to ask you guys, since there's 4 of you, turn to a partner and tell me, what is the main difference between the entertainment industry and youth sports culture? Go ahead.
The entertainment industry is dependent upon having a big audience or crowds at the game. Okay, good. And how does that change the actual culture of the sport? Well, in professional sports, the more you win, the bigger your crowds typically.
Exactly. Okay. The more you win, the bigger your crowd. So winning is definitely important for money making, I would say, in terms of audience. Yep. What else?
Yeah, I would go with what you would continue with what you said, is that entertainment, sport is for revenue generation, and that's the bottom line focus.
Yep.
Youth sport shouldn't have that focus. It should be a development focus of developing a person through their competition.
Yes. Now let me ask you, show of hands, how many of you have ever seen at a youth sporting event a parent that forgets that? A parent that might forget that this is about developing the athlete. Yeah, some of you have seen that. How many of you have ever seen excuse me one second, I'm going to go throw my dog outside. Professional pause there to throw the puppy outside. Okay. Yeah, so I really think it's important, as you said, to just let the parents and the audience and the coaches realize that there is a huge difference. Now, the difference in the culture of sports today, as we all know, this is a point just trainer to trainer. I do not allow the coaches to go on and on and on, because if you open it up to saying, what are some of the youth coaches doing these days that resemble an entertainment zone culture? That will open it up to a venting session of, I saw a parent once screaming and yelling, and I see these kids being, drug off the field. And, I would hesitate in asking you to share that type of information. But bringing it to their awareness about what a development zone culture means is very important. So getting back to my presentation now, Kelly the trainer, the development zone culture is where we'd like to get all the people involved in youth sports on the same page. And we've got a lot of people involved. We've got leaders, we've got parents, we've got coaches, and we've got athletes. If you walk out of this workshop tonight and you just are gung-ho about everything you've heard, and you want to go out there and go out tomorrow and coach the best you've ever been, that is fantastic. That is our goal. You are a double goal coach, as I explained. You're striving to win, but more importantly is teaching life lessons. However, if the parents of the kids that you're coaching are not on board with this philosophy, you might get some pushback. We encourage parents to be second goal parents. Second goal parents don't focus on the first goal of winning. Wouldn't that be amazing to be coaching a group of athletes and their parents were only focusing on supporting you in teaching the life lessons and building the character? They were not focusing on winning. I once heard somebody say the most coveted coaching position is the Little League orphans. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be great to be coaching a whole group of kids where parents were not involved at all? So that's what we have as second goal parents on board. Now, the next people to be on board is the athletes. We also want to train the athletes to be triple impact competitors. The triple impact competitor is constantly obsessed with better. They're working to make themselves better, their teammates better, and the game better. And we typically teach these athletes in high school, but we are starting to bring down the workshops to a little younger age. I did a workshop in Tampa in February for 3 to 5-year-olds as little triple impact competitors, and it worked. It was great. We did all the principles, everything we do with you on a very scaled down level, and they get it. They understand because they're in it for fun. They want to make themselves better. They want to play with their best friends, and the game is great to them. So we're trying to get that down to a younger level, but right now it's about the high school and college level. And then lastly, we have the single goal leaders. The leaders are the board of your organization, the athletic directors. And their goal is to create a culture, shape and support the culture that we're trying to create here. Because a lot of these things are just defending the culture of the development zone. So our standard is to have double goal coaches, second goal parents, triple impact competitors, and single goal leaders. And let me tell you, when you get your athletic program to a point where all of these are on the same page, man, sign me up. That's where I want to be coaching, and that's where I want my kids playing. And we want this to be the norm. We don't want it to be, oh, wow, that organization is so great. I want my kid on that team. We want the team that does not have one of these in place to be the one that, oh, my gosh, what's going on? Why aren't they coaching like this? Why aren't they playing like this? So this is the gold standard for the norm, and this is what we're trying to create. So right now we're going to talk about the principles that I'm going to be sharing with you today, and there's 3 of them, and these principles run through every workshop. They're research-based, they're performance-driven, and they're backed up by coaches that have used these principles and said, you know what, gosh, this is working. This is working for my players. I'm getting a lot more out of them. The first one is called the ELM Tree of Mastery, and the goal of the ELM Tree of Mastery is performance. We want to motivate our players to play the best they can possibly play and stick to the game and work hard. It's that simple. The second principle is called filling the emotional tank. Filling the emotional tank is really are our athletes coachable and teachable. We have to get these kids in a frame of mind where they are willing to listen to what we have to say as coaches, because we are full of great ideas and great information, and sometimes we think that we can just teach and teach and teach and tell these kids everything we want to tell them and they're just going to get it. but if they're not in the right frame of mind, they're not going to listen, and they're not going to perform. And the last one's called honoring the game. The goal of honoring the game is to help show these little ones that the game is bigger than themselves, and that the lessons they're going to learn that you coaches have said you've taken with you, those lessons are learned on the field right now. And that's the type of performance that they're going to have that's going to lead them to success in their life. So those principles run through every workshop. Right now we're going to start talking about the ELM tree of mastery. I'm going to show you a video clip from a movie called We Are Marshall. How many of you are familiar with this movie? All right, fantastic movie. The movie's, I'm not going to give you the whole rundown, but the movie's based on a true story from Marshall University in West Virginia. And I'm going to show you, this is a clip from the coach's locker room talk after the first half of the game. And this was a pretty successful, strong football program. And this coach is a certain type of coach, and I want you to think about what is that coach using to motivate his players. Oops.
Good effort out here today. Let me be clear about this. Good effort is not enough. Now, I'm proud of it. But I will not accept losing with you. Because there's only one thing they judge us on. There's only one thing people remember. And it ain't how we play the game. Winning is everything.
All right. Let me ask you, what did that coach use as a motivation technique? How does he get his players fired up? What does he use?
Fear.
He uses fear. Good. What else does he use?
Kind of humiliation.
Humiliation? Okay, possibly. Any of you ever had a coach like this? Anybody play for a coach like this ever?
Yeah.
Some of you may have. Yeah, recognize it. I've had a lot of coaches in my workshops go, oh gosh, I think that was my football coach in high school. Absolutely. What did that coach do well? Because, you know, we use this as an example of somebody that uses fear and intimidation and sort of a tough guy approach, but he did do some things well. What would you say as a coach he did well in trying to get that team fired up for the second half of the game?
He's very result-oriented.
He's very what? Result-oriented?
Result-oriented.
Okay. Yep. What did he tell his team they were doing well? Anybody pick up anything?
He told them he was proud of them.
Mm-hmm. He told them he was proud of them, and he told them they gave good effort out there. Absolutely. So as a coach, he was praising them for the things they were doing well. His focus, however, was on what? What was his 100% focus?
Winning.
Winning. Winning was his focus. Now, how many of you would say, and I want to see a raise of hands here, how many of you would say that this type of coaching is effective? I'd like you to raise your hand. Do you think, is it effective? Will it produce results? Okay, some of you do. How many of you say no, this type of coaching does not produce results and it's not effective? Okay, now, the reason that I want you to raise your hands is because there are different frames of mind, and now, trainer to trainer here, if I know that I have time, this is a fantastic debate to get into because I have had many, many coaches that have said, that works. I've had coaches like this. They have pushed me to be my best. I have had coaches that have worked me harder than ever. If you have time, I'm not going to do it with you right now because of time, but if you do have time, interesting line of questioning to put in. It's just if you want to, if you feel comfortable, if you feel like you can handle it. I've had some really good discussions based around this. Now, so bottom line is this coach is focusing on winning. That's where his result is. Now, the interesting thing is coaches that focus on winning, this was a study that was done, and this is an optional slide. I like to throw it in because I like the research behind it, but it is optional. You don't have to put this in. But this was a study that was done back in 2002 in the 2000 in the Sydney Olympics, and Dr. Joan Duda studied coaches that focus on only winning and studied coaches that focus on the mastery of their sport and getting better. And the interesting thing is what she found was, at the end of the Olympics, which ones earned the most medals? How many of you would say the ones that focused on winning, like that coach? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you would say ones that focused on their sport and getting better? All right, now, of course, you knew that was going to come because we were talking about winning. Why? Why would you say the ones that did not focus on winning actually won more medals at the end of the games?
that focused on getting better. Won more medals, you mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it kind of takes the pressure off the players because they're focused on what's controllable.
Mm-hmm.
And winning is not always controllable, but getting better, that focus is controllable.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're controlling what you can control. Control the controllables. Many of us have coaches that have said control the controllables. Absolutely. Now, another trainer to trainer. Another idea I've seen a lot of trainers do for this one, if you want to get them up and moving around, you saw in the beginning, I have the coaches moving around a lot in the intro. So when I start the Elm Tree of Mastery, I don't usually have them up and out of their seats again. But I've seen other trainers take this slide alone and do a continuum line and say, okay, if you feel that the coaches that focus on winning win more games, I want you to stand on this side of the room. And if you feel the ones that focus on mastery win more games, stand on this side of the room. And if you feel somewhere in between, stand somewhere in between. And they make like an imaginary line in the front of the back of the room. Again, it's a good debate. It gets them talking. And then in your group, talk about why you think the coaches that focus on winning win more games. Talk about why those that focus on mastery win more games. Again, it takes time, but maybe that's something that you'd like to try. Maybe that sounds like something that would be a good debate for you. All right, I'm going to show you another video, and this is after, unfortunately, in the story, the Marshall football team and a lot of the boosters and the coaches, they perished in a fatal plane crash. So this new coach, Jack Lingle, had to take over and rebuild a team pretty much from the ground up. He had a few players that had played before. Apparently, he was pulling kids out of the dorm rooms that have ever touched a football before and had to rebuild this team. So in terms of skills, these kids were not at the top of their game. George, did you have a question?
I'm just getting a big echo.
I think it's David. Yeah, when David's not on, I've been trying to mute you, David. Sorry.
I'll mute it. Hold on.
Okay. Is that better?
Yep.
Okay. So he had to build this team from the ground up. So focusing on effort is much more important here because the skills just aren't there. I want you to listen to the way he speaks to his team and where his focus is.
I want to talk about our opponent this afternoon. Bigger, faster, stronger, more experienced, and on paper, they're just better. And they know it too. I want to tell you something that they don't know. They don't know your heart. I do. I've seen it. You have shown it to me. You have shown this coaching staff, your teammates. You have shown yourselves just exactly who you are in here. When you take that field today, you've got to lay that heart on the line, man. From the soles of your feet, with every ounce of blood you've got in your body, lay it on the line until the final whistle blows. And if you do that, we cannot lose. We may be behind on the scoreboard at the end of the game, but if you play like that, we cannot be defeated.
So where's this coach's focus?
Effort.
Focus on effort. Lay your heart on the line. I had a trainer once, and I never picked up on it before, but this trainer said, what did this coach, Jack Lingle, call his players? Did anybody catch that? I never picked up on it before. He said men. Lay your heart on the line, men. And maybe that's because I wasn't a man growing up playing sports, but he said, for a coach like that to actually respect you enough to call you men. You weren't just pawns on the chessboard. You weren't just players. You weren't just trying to get the end result or I'm going to be happy or sad with you. He said, you might be behind on the scoreboard, but at the end of the game, we cannot lose. If that's not focusing on the big picture and the life lessons, I don't know what is. So let's talk about this principle of mastery versus a scoreboard definition. There's actually a really funny phrase called the McDonald's theory. And if you've ever coached youth under the age of 7, 8, something like that, and you take them after the game for ice cream or to McDonald's and they're in uniform, and you show up to a McDonald's and there's perfect strangers in front of them and they see them in uniform, what's the very first question that they're asked when they show up at McDonald's?
Did you win?
Did you win? Right, did you win? Now, sometimes the kids are like, yeah, we won, it was great, we won 3-0. And the second question, if they say, no, we lost, The next response that you usually get from the McDonald's person is, oh, great, would you like to order? Because as soon as we are told that we didn't win, all of a sudden you're second-class citizens. What I like to focus on as a coach is that these kids are playing a sport. Pretty simple concept. Kids playing a sport. Kids are not the sport they play. And there's a huge difference in that. And I have seen over the years many, many kids that I meet, and I'll say, hey, Timmy, how are you? Tell me some things you'd like to do. And he said, I'm a basketball player. And I always think, gosh, Timmy's a basketball player. That's great. But if Timmy's not doing well in basketball that day, or Timmy's basketball team loses, he's going to consider himself a loser or himself a failure. So as parents, I think our job is to really build up our kids and focus on the effort that they put into games and into practices, but also into their music or into their math or into how they treat their brother and sister. And they play.
Hello?
Who wins and who loses. Whereas a coach or players that are in a mastery definition type of coaching are focusing on effort, just like you saw Coach Jack Lengel said, lay your heart on the line, give them everything you've got. The scoreboard definition coaches are focusing on comparing themselves with the other team. They're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger. Others out there, you know, we might be better than them. A lot of times I hear coaches demonizing the other players, and I just heard it actually at a swim meet the other night. I couldn't believe. Sometimes I bring my notebook to these swim meets when I go to with my kids because I get lots of information. But a parent was trying to psych up her daughter and said, don't worry, you're faster than all those other girls out there. I just want you to go out there and swim, but you can beat them. And I thought, oh my goodness, that is just comparing with others. She was trying to motivate her daughter in the right way, but that was where her focus was. Whereas somebody that's coaching in a mastery definition are focusing on learning. I think it's an awesome challenge. And Doc Rivers is another one that says when he's talking to his kids, what a great thing to put your kid up against somebody that's better than them. What a great opportunity to learn from another player. And coaches, we can do the same thing because we know not everybody has the same talent level. So talk to your kids about what did they learn from playing man-to-man on somebody that was better than them? What did they learn from the person that just beat them in that race? What did they learn from the person that just jammed their jump shot down their throat when they went to take a beautiful shot? So thinking of those things in terms of effort and learning. Now last, scoreboard definition coaches, mistakes are not okay. All right, I'm on your team. I'm playing basketball. I just went up for the last buzzer beater shot and I missed. Now I'm going to turn around and look at you and I want you to non-verbally show me as a coach that it was not okay that I just made that mistake. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Yeah, exactly. And folks, research has also shown that non-verbal actions like the ones you just did stick with kids in their memory 10 times longer than what you say. So this is what the kids are going to remember. The mastery definition coach says it's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes are okay. Now let's just take 1 second to think about that. Mistakes are okay. What's okay about making a mistake? I have just coached you. I've done that drill 50 times. We've practiced it in practice. And then you go out and you still take a shot on goal where you had a terrible angle. How is that okay? Can anybody help me out?
Yeah, because a lot of times you can say it all you want, but when you do it yourself physically, you learn from it. I mean, you could tell me all day long not to do it that way, but until I do it that way, then it makes more sense to me.
Good. So George, if I was thank you for sharing that. That's a very clear explanation. So if I was that player that just missed that shot, and we went over the angles of shots in soccer at practice all day yesterday, and I just came out because the game was over, and I'm dejected because I just messed up, and the crowd's not happy with me. My dad's in the stands, won't even look at me. How could you as a coach reframe that for me so that I know I could learn from that? What was something you would say to me?
Well, actually, it happened last year at our playoff game in the tournament. We were 2 points down, and the girl, she's been a good shooter, but I've been trying to work with her to step in a couple of steps because that was more in her range. And she shot the ball with no time left, and it came just a little bit short, but it was right on line. And I was just really happy that she took the shot. She had the courage to shoot it. And, you know, later on, I left it there, but I know in her heart she knew that wasn't her. You know, that wasn't her. I called it the money shot. That wasn't where her money shot was. But I still was proud that she took the shot. And we talked about it at the first of this season. And I said, you were this close. You're going to make it this year. And she smiled. So.
Good. So you were excited that she got the shot. You were praising her that she got open for the shot.
Oh, yeah.
And as soon
as she shot it, and we were 3 points short of, no, 2 points short of the game. Earlier that season, that team had beat us by 16 points.
Mm-hmm.
So we made an improvement, and we had our 2 big girls that were out. So I talked to 2 of the girls on the team, and they said that was their favorite game.
Great.
And that was the game we lost.
Isn't that neat? Where the favorite game is the one where they lost. Thank you for sharing that, George. I appreciate that. So Stephen brought up earlier control, the idea of control. So if I was going to show you these 2 categories, scoreboard definition coaches and teams and mastery definition coaches, which one would you say are most in control? Which of these columns do we have control over? I'm going to ask you, put your thumbs up if you think it's the scoreboard definition coaches. All right, put your hand on your head if you think it's mastery definition coaches. Yeah, that's where it should be, right at the top of your head. Because sometimes as coaches, we lose our head and we forget. And we go back to this scoreboard definition because that's what society, that's what the entertainment culture tells us to do. So I always say, put your hand on your head, keep it cool, keep a cool head about you, because we know not only focusing on effort, learning, and mistakes are okay will be better for the athlete in the long run. It is research-backed and proven. It is non-controversial in sports psychology that this is the way to get the best performance out of your athletes. Not many things are non-controversial in sports psychology, and this is one of them. So Robert Rosser, being one of the people from Stanford University who's done studies on this, has actually found in this mastery climate, anxiety is going to go down and self-confidence is going to go up. So I don't know about you, but if I had a team of anxiety-free, self-confident players, just imagine the things that they could do on the field. Imagine how coachable they would be. It's just phenomenal. So we call this the ELM, effort, learning, and mistakes are okay, because it gives players this feeling of control. Let me ask you a question, because sometimes, as I said, we do lose our head. Can you call out for me 5 things in any given athletic contest that are completely out of our control or out of the athlete's control?
Referees.
Let's see if we can. Referees. Good.
Winning.
Yep.
Quality of the opponent.
Good.
The weather.
Yes.
Hecklers.
Hecklers, and what the audience is saying. Yes. How much of our time is spent focusing on those things that are out of our control? Okay, make your job more simple. Focus on what you can control as a coach as well. And it will, as coaches, we need to coach the mastery definition, the mastery climate, but we also have to be living it as well. So, again, we want our athletes to be able to work harder, stick to it longer. I don't know how many of you have a sports psychologist on staff with your youth program. I don't. So I really appreciated the research that, now I'm talking about the book. Here it is. The research that is backed up in this book. And it's got so many proven tools that can help you learn how to put these into effect. Let's talk about this right now in terms of your team. Jesse, we're going to talk about a scenario here. Jesse hangs his head every time he misses a shot, and as a result, he doesn't get back on defense. What can you do? So coaches, let's put it into practice. Now, trainer to trainer, there's a couple different ways that you can handle this. One of the things that I like to do personally at my workshops, depending on who the audience is, if I have an audience of multi-sport coaches, then I will specifically have them get together by sport. So I'll say, okay, all of you that are soccer coaches, I'd like you to stand here. Baseball coaches over here. Basketball coaches over here. I actually did this once because I had a group of, you could just tell they were fun, and I had them act out the sport they were playing. I said, without talking, you need to act out the sport you're playing and get in groups according to what sport you coach. And it was really fun because I had the coaches trying to bump a volleyball. They were the volleyball coaches. And then I had coaches pretending to dribble around and they had to find each other. And it was actually a lot of fun. So I'll have them get together by sport. If it's a single sport workshop, then I will have them get together by age. Now, I'll have if you coach U8, stand here in this group, U10, U12, and over 15 over here. Now, why do you think I would have them break up sport-specific and not mix up? Sport-specific or age-specific? Why do you think that would be important in a scenario like this?
They're all different at that age.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had the girls, when they went from 3rd to 4th grade, they changed big time.
Yeah. I used to mix up the groups all the time because I was big into mixing everybody up, and I found some really valuable information. And what I like about this is, for example, when they mix up by age level, I like having the 8 and under and the 10 and under coaches hear how the older kids handle this situation, how the older coaches handle it in the same league. So it's kind of a wake-up call sometimes. When they do it sports-specific, it's also nice because they use the same terminology. So, for example, Jesse hanging his head every time he misses a shot and doesn't get back on defense, the baseball players have to translate into baseball language, and I tell them that. Think about it in terms of your sport, and the baseball people would say, okay, Jesse hangs his head every time he strikes out, and as a result, he's not ready for the next swing or something like that. So it just helps to do it that way. We do have a soccer version, and we do have, I believe we have a baseball version too, don't we, Ruben, of this workshop? So if you are doing a sport specific in soccer or baseball, we do have the scenarios towards you, but I mean towards that specific sport. But sometimes, you just have to make do with what you have. All right, so Jesse hangs his head, as a result does not get back on defense. You would be in groups, I'd give them 2 or 3 minutes to talk about this, and then I would say, what I'd like you to do is appoint a spokesperson that's going to share with the group how your age group or your sport would handle this. Now, at times I've also said, all right, now I want you to decide whose birthday is closest to tonight, and they're going to be the spokesperson, depending on how open the audience is to sharing. And the nice thing about that is getting everyone to share is you really only have about 4 or 5 people sharing, sometimes only 3 people sharing, so it doesn't take up a lot of time to do. It's very valuable. So they talk, they come up with the best answer, and then they share. And the nice thing is about this as well, I'd hear a couple people share. Like, for example, can I have one of you just share an example of an answer? How would you handle this? Just pretending you were a coach. What would your answer be? What would you do as a coach?
I would discuss, a mistake ritual, and before this happened, I would talk about the mistake ritual and establish one for them, so that they would stay positive during the rest of the game, and then after the game talk about the importance of staying positive and how the fact that is he kept positive body image and hustle and positive expression, how it helped the team and how he was able to make a contribution to the team as a result of using the mistake ritual and competing hard.
All right, thank you, Stephen, for sharing that. I heard you use the term mistake ritual. Could you kind of explain to the group what that means? Because I don't think we haven't really gotten into that yet. That is a Positive Coaching Alliance term that we use. Could you just explain to the group what that means?
Yeah, well, that was completely from the book. It was not.
Which they haven't read yet.
I had nothing to do with that, but and reading some of the answers, online, whether like one of the answers on one of the responses was they had a rubber band, and they, if you missed a shot, and you started being negative, they snapped the rubber band, and it kind of helped shock them into, okay, hey, wait a second, let's let it go, let's move on. But the ones the book used would be like, wiping it, wiping the sweat off, or flushing that down, so that you remove that negative thought that might come in your mind, so that you can pick it up for the next play.
Very good, thank you. And I like the way you said next play, because I've heard many many coaches use that as their mistake ritual. Next play. It's a great trigger to say, you know what, I'm ready. Because we all know as coaches, the most important play is what? The next play, right? And the whole call. The reason I was picking on you, Stephen, is because what I like to do is when they share their answer, sometimes you'll have most of the coaches have probably not read this book and not heard the term mistake ritual. So what I like to do whenever I hear an answer from the audience, and they might say, well, we always do, shake it off, or just brush it off, whatever the term is, they have a mistake ritual already put in place. They just don't call it the terminology that we do. And I would, to involve and validate the participants there, I would say, oh, Stephen, that's great that you already do that. In PCA, we call that a mistake ritual. And it just gives them, one of the valuable things about Positive Coaching Alliance partnerships is we have the language that can make a standard across the board for things that coaches already do and find successful. So thank you very much for sharing that. That's the only reason I was picking on you, because a lot of times people haven't heard of that yet, and it's nice to bring it in. And or for another example, I would say, a lot of times coaches will say, well, I tell them, good job, you'll get it next time. And that's one of the answers that I'll get the group to share. And I'll say, you know what, that's a really great example of what we call tank filling. And even though I haven't gotten to that principle yet, I just kind of put it out there as a little teaser and say, you're filling up their emotional tanks because that's what they need in order to get their mind ready for the next play. When you click the slide again, that's when this little part will come up that'll say, All right, the neat thing about each one of our principles in our book, if you can open up to chapter 4, is a toolkit. Every one of our principles comes with a toolkit. We want you to walk out of here armed and ready for what will happen at practice or in a game. So on page 23, there's an example of a mistake ritual. And as Stephen mentioned, we use something called the flush. And this is something that was coined from a college coach out in Redwood City, California. And he uses this with his college basketball players. And it is the flush. So I'm going to ask everybody right now, put your arm up in the air. And on the count of 3, we are going to make the loudest flushing sound you've ever heard. 1, 2, 3. Now, I always get laughs from adults and smiles when I do this, and I always say, okay, you think that's hilarious. Imagine doing that with a bunch of 8-year-old boys on your baseball team. Anything potty related is great. So anytime you can get a player that's down to smile, giggle, whatever it is, the flush is great for little kids. Flush it down the drain, it's gone. It's a physical sign that triggers a mental reset for your players. And I think brushing it off, the rubber band, as Stephen said, do any of you have another mistake ritual that you've used with your team other than the flush or brush it off or just saying next play that you've seen to be very effective?
3 years ago, we have a motto. It was tough, and we used to do that at every break. And it wasn't just physically; it was mentally. And I guess our saying was, "Don't worry about what might happen. Don't worry about what just happened. Just be in a moment." And the girls thought that was funny, but our mistake ritual was, you know, we were tough.
Yeah.
And so anyway.
That's great. That's great. I had a very similar story. I have a little girl. I coached 5th and 6th grade lacrosse this year, and I had the tiniest girl on my team, and she was up against some bigger girls most of the time. And I would always say to her, I would say, Emily, you're a beast, because that was one of the videos that we used in PCA for some of our other workshops, is Chris Collins saying your players are a beast. So she would come out and she'd say, oh, I got beat again, or I got beat to the ball, or I just missed the shot. And I'd say, come on, Emily, you're a beast. You could do it. And she would always giggle. And this little teeny tiny Emily would go, I am a beast, coach, I am a beast. And, you know, it was just a way to get her to get focused, get back in the game, and feel like, you know what, I'm a part of it. All right, so that is the end of the Elm Tree of Mastery portion. Again, if there's time, this section usually takes I would say between 15 and 20 minutes to go through. Some trainers can do it in a little bit less, but I tend to spend about 15 to 20 minutes on this principle because there is a lot to it. I also like to show them, since it's the first principle that we're talking about, I like to show them in the book, just to take a minute to page through some of the other tools. And even though the only one up here on the slide says mistake ritual, I personally love to use on page 25 effort goals and outcome goals. So if I have time at every workshop, I like to ask the players to turn to page 25 because we're trying to focus on the skills that it takes to perform a certain task in sports. So I always bring up, and again, this is something that changed the way I coached because I was always a goal setter, but I wasn't necessarily setting the right goals. So I would have a volunteer. I would say, okay, do we have any baseball coaches here? Could somebody that's a baseball coach or whatever sport, can you read for me the effort goal under the first column of baseball or softball? And they would say, yes, the effort goal is to run hard through first base on a grounder. And then I would say, okay, can somebody read the outcome goal for me? Beat the throw to first. Now I would ask them, what's the difference between those two goals? Can somebody answer for me what the difference is between those two goals?
Well, you're actually asking for the same thing. You're just getting it in a different way.
Okay. What's the difference?
Well, when you're telling them to give it to their best, running out the hard, running as hard as they can, that's all they know. And then all of a sudden, when they see that they're running as best, you never know what's going to happen. And a lot of times, people drop the ball, it goes by, and so they feel good. So even if they've been thrown out at first, they still feel good that they gave it their best. And so, and usually, like you said, when they come back, somebody's going, we'll get them next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. One of the simplest ways that I can show mastery focus is if I'm rewarding the kids on my team for something that everyone can do. It's that simple. If it's an outcome goal, that's where I want them to be. I want them to beat the throw to first base. That's exactly what I want. I want every girl to get the rebound. I want every guy to get possession of the ball. I want to get the ball to first and control it, and I want to make the tackle. Those are all the things that I want as a coach. However, not every kid on my team is going to 100% successfully get the rebound. So as a young college basketball coach, if my team was getting killed on the boards, I used to give little quick speeches to my team, like, okay, guys, I know we're down, but I want you to come back in the next quarter, and I want you to get every rebound. Okay, that's what we're going to focus on, getting the rebounds. Because I thought, oh, yeah, I'll come and I'll focus them on something defensive, and then they won't get upset that they're not scoring. Where I found was that as soon as they had the first couple of shots go up and we got crushed on the boards again, my kids already felt like they were failing. However, if I would have focused the kids on the mastery, what skill do you need to do to get a rebound? Well, to get a rebound, I need to block out. Can every player on my team get in position to box out? Yes, they all could. Didn't always look pretty, but they all could get in the right position when the ball went up. And so that was something that I could focus on. So instead of saying get the rebound, I could say I want you all to box out. Now, here's my question as coaches. Can we make the kids accountable for effort goals?
Yeah.
Because we can keep accountability for those goals. And if we can, how do we do that? And have you done that successfully? Can you guys hear me? Because I think you're freezing back and forth here.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. So we know the focus needs to be on effort. How do we keep track? Can we keep track of these effort goals?
I think Steve had a response.
Okay. I'm sorry, you were frozen. I couldn't see who was. Steve, go ahead.
Oh, you can track them, and you can track effort. I mean, how many times did you run through the base? Run through first base, keeping your eyes ahead, and you can graph it and track it, and let the kid know that only at the beginning of the year he hustled down first only 20% of the time, and then midway through season he improved that to 80% of the time. And you can also have little funny awards that you can give that you can name them something funny or whatever. It can be a goofy T-shirt or a painted ball, or and so that you're rewarding effort, and then you're showing it. You're not only telling him, but you're doing it in front of his peers, so it becomes a model for everybody else.
Great, and I like the way you said too, just something goofy and silly. It doesn't have to be something of value. We call that a symbolic reward, targeted symbolic reward. It doesn't have to mean anything, doesn't have to have value. But I also like the way, Stephen, you were explaining that you're rewarding sometimes unsuccessful goals. The goals are not successful, but you're rewarding the effort that went into it. One of the things that I love to do is to have a full staff, so that everyone on my staff can keep track of every one of these effort goals that I give to my kids, and just so at every stop, every timeout, I have all my staff hands me my clipboard, and I can say, okay, yeah, Jim, you did this, and George, you did this. In reality, most of us have a staff of one, maybe two. So I had an idea this year, and it worked fabulously. I gave each player on my youth lacrosse team an index card, and every game, before the game started, while they were stretching, they wrote down the effort goal for that half on the front of the index card. So it could have been beat the girl to the ground ball, run hard through every ground ball. So they just wrote ground balls, run to them, run through them. And then right before the game started, I had them run to their parents and hand them the index card. So every parent sitting in the stands had an index card for their child that had the effort goal on it. And the parent's job was to write down how many times their daughter ran straight through and sprinted to every ground ball. And it changed the season. Because number one, I had the parents focusing on effort rather than outcome. Number two, they were doing the work for me. And then as soon as the whistle blew for the half, the very first thing the kids did was run to their parents and pick up the card. And they brought it back to me, and and the kids were like, wow, I ran through 8 ground balls. That's awesome. And it gave the parents a chance to go, nice job, honey, and that's what they focused on. And I explained this at the parent meeting, that this is something I was doing. So I had a problem. I knew what I had to do. I didn't have the staff to do it, and I figured out a way for it to work. And the kids all absolutely loved it. And every game they would say, okay, what's our effort goal this time? What's our effort goal this time? So it was really a neat way to do it. So as I said, trainer to trainer, if you have time, pick a couple. That's why this week I asked you to pick 2 or 3 tools from the toolkit and explain it using sport-specific examples, because this is the meat. This is what the coaches want to hear. These theories are great. The research is great. How do I put it into practice on my team? So have some stories in your pockets of some other tools that you use. Point them to page 25. Oh, wow. And you know what? If you look at page 28, this is exactly what Stephen was talking about. Getting things done with targeted symbolic rewards. Dirty shirt, painted ball, Under Armour wristband, whatever it is, a ribbon in the hair. And it gets them into the book, and it gets them to realize, wow, these are some great resources here. All right, so we've got about 5 minutes left. That's the end of the principle. I'd like to hear some feedback from you guys. What are some things you liked, confused, questions? What would you try? Do you have any story you would tell? I heard George's story before. I thought that's a great story to put in there. This is your time to share here. So I will keep my mouth shut and let you share. Or Ruben, if you have anything to add in, you're welcome to do that too.
I can make some comments, Kelly, but I want to make sure the others get a chance first.
Okay.
With our limited time.
Okay.
Kelly, I have a question about the effort goals.
Mm-hmm.
How many seasons have you used them, and give me some more background or context for that and how it's worked out. I loved your idea about getting the parents involved.
Yeah.
I think that would work great in building the development zone if you had parents involved. Mm-hmm. I guess if you have another example that doesn't maybe involve parents, if a coach wasn't, I don't know, comfortable with that, or give me some more.
Yeah, we actually have, when we get into the scenarios, we actually have a tool called positive charting. And positive charting is a paper that you can have on your clipboard, and it has an effort goal. You can do it by goal. You can have each player's list on the clipboard, and then it has the goal specifically. It can be one goal for the whole team, or it can be a specific goal for each player. And it's something, if you're a really savvy coach, you can keep track of how many times they run through first base, or sprint after the ground ball, or follow through on their shot. And you can just put little tally marks. And then you can pull the team back together again. If you have a chance to look through the scenario menu, there's actually a video of one of our trainers using this with his football team. But it's a great way to use assistant coaches, or to use if you have a manager on your team, or just some players sitting on the bench. You can just have a clipboard passed around, and they can all say, oh my gosh, did you see him do that? Or that was a great follow through. Or what you have to do is think, what is the outcome goal you'd like to achieve? And then what are the skills that lead up to that goal? What skills would have to happen in order for that, serve or whatever it is to work?
Good, thank you for that. Because my first reaction when you brought that up is, man, that's a lot. That seems very tedious for a head coach, and usually, as you said, there's just usually one person there. Mm-hmm. Seems a lot for a coach to have to digest or hold kids accountable for when there's just one coach.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Kelly, you have to come up with solutions. Go ahead, Ruben.
Kelly, I'll jump in there.
Yep.
I'll jump in there about effort goals with a couple points. Kelly described effort goals as something that all the players can do. That's one way to look at it, and it makes sense for a lot of people. Another way to look at it is effort. Something's an effort goal if there's a high degree, if the athlete has a high degree of control over whether they achieve it or not. So for example, beating the throw to first base, I have limited control over that. Running hard to first base, I think we'd say we have a lot of control over that. So I just wanted to throw that out as another way to look at distinguishing whether something's an effort goal or an outcome goal. And then as far as David just brought up accountable, and Kelly, you asked how to hold them accountable and tedious. To me, and in some youth sports, you have playing time guidelines that you must honor. I've coached in a league where a player can miss every practice, never try, but they get to play a quarter of the game. It's and that's fine. There's a reason that we have those guidelines in some youth sports league. But at a certain level, I think that the number one way to hold players accountable for effort and effort goals is playing time. As a college coach, and I think back on the many mistakes I made as a college coach. I think back to the times where I gave players playing time who weren't given their best effort. So I just wanted to throw that in on that topic.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Anyone else? Again, it's hard even on these calls. I always do that. I said the drive home from the workshop. I always think, oh my gosh, I have to, all this stuff I forgot to say, and I do it on these calls too. I get done these hangouts and I'm like, oh, I should have brought up that. I'm
getting an echo.
Yeah, that's okay. We're going to wrap up. If anybody has any questions or comments and you'd like to stick on for a little bit, that's great. But I appreciate your time, guys. I appreciate you joining us, and your answers have been great to the questions. So try to get on and hear, especially the examples of the toolkit, the sport-specific examples. So great to hear from other sports, especially ones you're not familiar with. Ruben?
Kelly, if people have to go, I understand, but if anybody can stay on for a couple minutes, I do have a couple other things I'd like to share with the group.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll start, and if you have to sign off, I won't be offended.
Yep.
I got to run. Sorry, Ruben.
Yeah. See you, Joe.
Okay.
See ya.
All right. Thanks, Kelly. See you guys.
Yep. You're welcome.
So I always learn from Kelly and the other trainers I get to work with. And Kelly, the McDonald's theory, is it an actual theory?
I actually read an article, and someone called it the McDonald's theory.
Okay,
so I coined that. But
I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding correctly. Okay, I love that. I like the act out your sport and find the others that are for making groups. Again, if the situation's right, that's something I'll do. If the situation's, if you're at a high school athletic department and all the coaches know each other and they know, then it doesn't make sense. But if it's truly people so I love that. And your effort goal on a card anecdote, I really. I love it. I love it. So, hey, I joined the call late, so some of this may have been addressed, but I just want to make sure some things are understood. Scoreboard definition, mastery definition of winning. There are definitions of winning and success. Okay, and the trainer notes say that, the slide doesn't say that, but I think it's important that your participants understand we're comparing definitions of winning and success here. With the scoreboard and mastery, PCA is not saying it should be 100% focus on mastery. We're not saying that. We think that the scoreboard has its place. We think there's a balance, okay? And the balance should be heavily skewed towards mastery, especially in youth sports. But, there's time. That first coach, or the mastery coach, did compare with others in his talk.
Yeah.
He said they're bigger,
stronger,
they're faster. So it's not like a mastery coach will never compare with others. Okay. So it's not about one or the other. It's about a healthy balance skewed heavily to mastery.
And that's what, Ruben, if you get a chance, the question, the weekly discussion question this week was, what is the value of the scoreboard and how do coaches use it effectively? So I think the answers, everybody's come up with some great answers for that one as well.
Excellent. On the scenario, if your participants don't bring this up, I think, in fact, let me ask the three that are on with us, what about this scenario? What about this scenario is okay? Okay, we just talked about mistakes are not okay. And mistakes are okay. So looking at this scenario, what part of the scenario are you not okay with as a coach? Are you okay with? I'm sorry, which part are you okay with?
Well, I'd be okay with him missing a shot.
Okay, very good. I agree.
That happens.
I agree. What part are you not okay with?
You should get back on defense.
Why are you not okay with that?
Well, because if we practice it every day, it's not like we're ignoring winning, and if he doesn't get back on defense, he's letting the team down, and he's letting down what he practiced for. But you don't want to tell him that it's not okay because he could lose confidence in himself. But in your mind, it's really not okay because you're trying to win the game, and he should.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. Is getting back on defense something the athlete has a high degree of control over?
Yes.
So him not getting back on defense is a lack of?
It's a lack
of what?
He didn't flush it down the toilet. He didn't.
It's a lack of what?
Effort.
It's a lack of effort, right?
Mastery. What's the mastery definition of winning? What's the E in ELM stand for?
Effort.
Effort. Lack of effort is not okay, even for a mastery-oriented coach. In fact, it's less okay for a mastery-oriented coach. For a scoreboard-oriented coach, lack of effort is actually okay if the ball goes in, if we win, if you help me look good. Okay, so in terms of the scenario, I'm just role-playing with you a little bit about how you can explore that, okay? And you can even, so I asked you what's okay about this scenario, what's not okay. That's, one way to approach it. I'll try to wrap up here.
I like that. I never really thought about that lack of effort is okay for a scoreboard-focused coach. I never thought about that until you said it, because it is true. Lack of effort is fine as long as the result was the shot was scored, or the play happened, or the race was won.
Do you think, what would that first coach's speech have been after the game if they had not tried very hard but won the game?
I'm proud of you.
We did it.
Yeah.
We did what's important. We won.
Yeah.
So, okay, Kelly, I'm done. Thank you for giving me that little extra time. Thanks for staying with me a little later. Steve and George and David.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Ruben.
Guys. See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Have a good one.